The Startup Cabin podcast is brought to you by Cedarwood. Cedarwood rents out senior CFOs to the tech industry from 1 to 5 days a week. For more, go to cedarwood.co. Welcome to the Startup Cabin podcast, where we share great insights from European startups and investors. I'm Steve Ferris, and today you're going to be hearing from Ricky Helgesson, who is founder of Univrses. Univrses is adding positional tracking to mobile virtual reality with no cables, no expensive hardware, and no external trackers. It's just you and your legs. In our longest show to date, Shumei and Ricky are totally going to geek out as they talk about the areas that Univrse can open up for exploration. It's in gaming, game development, and live entertainment, and if you love games, you're totally going to love this. So let's get into it. I'll be back at the end of this interview to wrap things up.
So, welcome to Startup Cabin podcast.
Thank you.
So, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what company you run?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ricky Helgesson. I have been working with IT since my first job in 1996, and I started programming as a 10-year-old kid in 1986. So I've been doing a lot of programming throughout the years, which means that I have also decided to go into many other areas like production, being producer, working as different kinds of managers and so on. But I always have one part in the technology because that's where I'm coming from and that's what I have a lot of interest in. I've been working with games companies, DICE and Frostbite in the past, and doing games even before that in my spare time because of the high interest. Now, a few years ago, we saw VR, virtual reality, starting to come back onto the market through Oculus. And I followed that closely when I was working as a producer and tech lead for the mobile group at DICE in Sweden. About a year ago, I saw that there was a lot of potential for, a lot of things to do in virtual reality because it's like a wide open market of things that needs to be done to make virtual reality and augmented reality to really be what it can be. So during the summer or end of the summer last year, I started working with some colleagues regarding positional tracking for virtual reality and augmented reality. So we founded this company called Univrses. And what we are doing now is quite interesting. We are actually adding large-scale positional tracking for virtual reality and augmented reality. And it basically means that anyone can put on a virtual reality headset, anything from Google Cardboard to Gear VR, which Google Cardboard is the cheapest and simplest solution for virtual reality, where you slide your phone into like a $10 cardboard box with lenses, and then you can actually experience virtual reality. To Samsung Gear VR, which is the high-end part, the high-end gear in virtual reality for mobile virtual reality, where you also slide in a phone that is tailored specifically for this Gear VR. And then there's like 50 other mobile headsets out there that you can put your phone inside and experience virtual reality. And we provide positional tracking for all these devices, which means that you can actually put this on, look in virtual reality, look around, and you can actually start walking in virtual reality. So that's what we are adding to this space. You can actually walk around and experience everything as it should be experienced. And the difference is huge because normally with mobile VR, you're in one place essentially, and you can just look around. But if you try to move your head, a lot of people get nausea because you actually don't move in VR. Your head is just being still in VR. as you try to move it. So that's what we're aiming for to become. So far, there's no competitors, but we expect, of course, the large companies, they are working with these things. We expect, but there's nothing being outed yet. So also the big companies are usually targeting like their specific hardware or their specific area of interest. We don't have any connections like that. We're not married to any of those tech corporations, so to speak. So that means that we can provide this for the wide masses of developers for iOS and Android for any head-mounted display, basically.
I mean, it's a very interesting product. We talked about this internally, that VR has come really far, but the motion sickness part is really, really messing it up for a lot of the companies, because you can't play for that long, you can't use them for that long, and I mean, this is what pretty much every kind of VR company is struggling with. How can we get rid of the motion sickness? I saw the videos that you have on your website where you show actually someone else kind of filming, and the person with the VR set, you get to see both the character they are and also how they actually stand in a regular room and see that character move around. And it's for a gamer like me, it's very exciting to see, because that's kind of the ultimate experience, to be able to actually merge so much into the game that you are actually acting and moving like the character.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's really creepy as well. Because it's like you can easily, you can be two persons in a room. Now I'm not talking virtual reality. You're just two people in a room. One of you put on a scary mask. You can easily scare your friend, right? Even though the person actually knows it's just you. But it's so scary when someone just suddenly looks so extremely different. And this is like taking this to another level. So it's actually really scary to play around with.
It seems like the perfect setting for like horror games, that you actually your friends play like the horror, like the characters, and they can actually touch you in real life, like touch your shoulder, and you look around. It's going to be a monster.
We talked about if I'm a fan of asynchronous gameplay. So we've been talking about what can be done with asynchronous gameplay in this. So since we can track any number of headsets and controllers in the same virtual experience, you can easily, one person might be this scary creature that tries to catch the other guy, and the other guy has a very limited vision, or has a flashlight that just works every now and then, or something that the one person has to just fight off the other person, and the other one is trying to catch him. It can be really, really scary. And another interesting thing is our technology works that the first thing you do is you map your environment where you want to be playing this. We call this, we create a playground. So the first thing you do is you take your phone, you walk around in the room or in the apartment or in the it can be really large spaces as well. It can even be outdoors, because our tracking is very resilient to light changes.
Oh, okay.
So it can be really large areas, or it can be small areas, and then you map your environment, and that's how you create your playground that the virtual reality experience will then take place in. And one thing we also just talked about, we haven't done anything in that area, but we talked about, what if we could find, let's say you map your apartment, you have a few rooms and a toilet and some space you can move around in, and then we try to match you with someone that has a similar apartment on the internet, and then you are either the one chasing or the one trying to get away. And it's really scary. So you don't even know the person. It's like the game Journey, but really, really scary. There can be a lot of things done in that area as well. So
I see also like the potential when you can map and actually track a lot of people, and you, as you said, you scan the room, so you have the setting, like the physical setting. I'm just thinking about all of these kind of laser dome and
Yeah,
big
absolutely.
hackathons and all of these kind of spaces that suddenly you can get so like the experience can be so much bigger. I see like in the future we will probably have kind of VR companies that you go to instead of going to a bar, you go to kind of Laserdome, but for the VR experience.
Yeah.
And I also see like the possibility when you can map so many people to have it actually for education. I mean, for kids, the immersive experience of actually, if you're talking about China, actually setting the class in China and walking them through the buildings or through the history that you're talking about, that potential is just enormous.
Yeah, it's amazing. You could easily go down to the sports hall with all the kids, and you could walk around on the wall of China, or you could walk around in some old battle from hundreds of years ago, or anything. And I think that's it's very interesting. So another thing we've talked about is that you can do. You can create experiences that when you create an experience without technology, you have to decide how large of a playground does my experience need. So maybe you're saying, okay, this game can be played with anything from 2 times 2 meters up to 5 times 5 meters. So if the player just has a 1.5 times 1.5 meters playground, they won't be able to play it. But one thing you can do is you can create experiences where the playground has to be 20 times 20 meters, for instance. And you can create a game like, I'm an old school gamer, so I think about games like Quake and those old school games when I have these ideas. And I think about that you can create a game like Quake where you can walk around like 4 times 4 people in this 20 times 20 meters area, and you can walk around, doors opening when you walk up to them. You can, step on something to pick up quad damage, and you can have all kinds of pickups, and you stand on something that opens the door for your friend so he can walk through, and any of these experiences that can be carried out in, for instance, in a sports hall, or if you have some outdoor area that's big enough, for instance. So I think that's also a totally new game genre that hasn't been it's never been possible to do before. The internal name we use for that is sport in a lack for a better word, but I think that is also a quite interesting thing that will open up. But what you're saying about the Laserdome thing, where you create a virtual world and a physical world that match up. I mean, that's a dream of mine. Actually, literally a dream of mine since, I don't know, 20 years back. I've actually woken up several times throughout the years and thinking, and the dream was that I was walking around in virtual reality, touching stuff and, just going, oh, wow, this is so real. Wow. And then I woke up and then it was not for real, but not for real. Oh, well. Yeah. So it's actually happened to me throughout the years. So I think I'm in the right place working with this.
So was it the idea itself that made you decide to start your own company and become an entrepreneur?
I've always been an entrepreneur. I've started 4 companies before this, and they're all still up and running. So I have actually, the only 2 jobs I've had that's not being startups is at DICE and at Frostbite. And that was great fun, and I learned a lot, and it's a lot of colleagues from there that I still have contact with, and it was a great time. But if you're a long-time entrepreneur and get good ideas, it's very hard to just not be able to reach out for the dream, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Did you like kind of knew early on that you wanted to become an entrepreneur?
No. I think that from the beginning it was just clear to me that I would be working with computers and software, especially. Mm-hmm. Have no interest in hardware. And then I was approached by some people quite early in my career, and they offered me shares in a company, and that's how it started. And then after that, I just started to love the freedom and the way you can think and act when you're part of the company you're creating, and just gone with it from there. So I wasn't thinking about it when I was a kid, if that's your question.
Mm-hmm. So with Univrses, what was your goal when you started it? Was it to just get this virtual reality kind of experience to out there, or what was it?
Well, it's still not out there, so mm-hmm. We're still working on that.
What was your personal goal?
Yeah. The personal goal. I love creating games, and I think it's very interesting to try to create a gameplay experience, especially for when you think about virtual reality. I think when you look at what's been done for Oculus Rift and what's been done for mobile virtual reality, mm-hmm. there's been done so many crappy experiences where a lot of creators so far hasn't been thinking about that virtual reality actually is a very different medium, and things needs to be done differently. So when I started out last summer, just fiddling around, I got my Oculus Rift, and I tried to do something with Oculus Rift to begin with, just to see what I can do. And I wanted to, the interesting thing with virtual reality is when you can feel presence. That means when the brain is fooled, that you're actually there. Mm. And anything that gives that away will just degrade the virtual reality experience to a cool 3D screen.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you create a game like a first-person shooter where the player is supposed to be pressing buttons on the keyboard and using the mouse, it's like there's no way you can fool the brain that you're actually running around in a virtual experience when you can hear the sound from your keyboard, you can feel the keyboard with your fingers. It's just, it's not working. It's not virtual reality. It's like you have a cool screen to your game. That's it. There's very limited things you can do when you're sitting at a desk in virtual reality. You can basically do things where you sit down, look around, and experience things happening around you. And that's what most of the great games for Oculus Rift is, simply that. It's horror games where you're sitting in a sofa or on a chair or something.
Yeah, because you have to feel the chair or the sofa that you're actually there, because otherwise it's not going to be that scary. Yeah. I think it's interesting what you said about, when you start doing the 3D scanning of rooms to get the actual play field for virtual reality, it also means that you have to change the way you kind of develop games. So the setting for developing games is going to be different. You have to set, as you said, like, is this going to be 20 square meters? Is this going to be 1 square meter? It's setting a new strategy layer on top of developing games. That's going to be very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting to see if the gaming industry kind of hooks onto that and starts kind of testing that now, because, as you said, it's a very complicated kind of area to get it right. When you get it right, it's going to be amazing, but it's going to be really hard to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you explain for the listeners how your product will work with for the game developers, but also kind of for these different mobile VR headsets? Do they, is it in the development stage that they use your product, or is it something you have to, as a user of the product, do you have to hook it up, or how does it work?
Yeah. So what we're doing is right now we have a Unity plugin. So any developer that's using Unity could potentially, even though we're not releasing it yet, but they could get started right away. And they will be able to as soon as we release it in a few months. So it's a Unity plugin, and it's very fast to get up and running. What you do is you download and install our plugin into Unity. Then you drag out our main component in your scene, and you have a lot of settings you can do regarding like demands for how large the playground has to be, and things like that. The next thing you do is that anything you want to be controlled by positional tracking, you drag out what we so far call a device. I don't know what's going to be called in the end, but you drag out a device component to any game object. It's actually called in Unity. Any game object that you want to be controlled by a positional tracked phone. So it could be, for instance, if you have a game where the only thing you can do is walk around with your headset on, and that's it, then you will probably have a character in the game, where you will use the head, the position and rotation of the head. There you will drag out this device thing. Then our component will automatically rotate and move that head. And then the developer should use something that's called inverse kinematics to make sure that the creature's body moves accordingly as good as possible in relation to the head movement. Now, if maybe your game supports that you can have that you can have a phone in your hand, because that's one thing we haven't really talked about yet with our technology, is that you can track many players with their headsets on, but you can also track a player that has a phone in their hand. And then we track the device the exact same way with camera-based positional tracking. So if you have a phone in your hand and maybe you use the volume buttons as triggers, you can move this around and you will actually see in virtual reality the movement of maybe it's a gun in your hand, or it's a torch, or it's something else. You will see how it moves exactly in relation to your head. When I was trying this out early on during the autumn, when we were still using an Oculus Rift as the rendering device, and we had just taped a phone on top of the Oculus, and we had another phone in the hand. And I was trying out, I had a toy gun, and then I had the same gun. I found the exact same replica gun on Unity Asset Store. So I was using the exact same gun, and I had taped a phone onto the gun. So I was just holding the gun in the real life, and I was looking at the gun in virtual reality. And it was so real, I was just looking at how awesome this gun looked. It was a really nice model. And then I accidentally moved it so close that it got through the near clipping plane. The near clipping plane is where the game engine essentially stops rendering stuff. So I moved it too close to my face. And then when it dissolved before my eyes, there was like a split second when I was so terrified. It was like, wow, the world is falling apart before my eyes. It was, just a split second where it was like Avatar or The Matrix, or it was really interesting moment there. The nice thing with this technology is that as a developer, you can just, put these device components on any of your things in Unity, and then you can just let a lot of people walk around. They can have one phone in each hand or whatever. And the nice thing is that the cost for the end consumer is a virtual reality headset, a mobile virtual reality headset which is from $10 to $200, where there are really good ones for $40. And that's the only cost they have. They have to have a decent phone, which pretty much everybody has, and you have to have a crappy phone in your hand. And I say crappy because we're not doing any rendering on the phone you have in your hand. So it can even have a cracked screen. It doesn't matter. It can be a really old Android phone you have in the drawer somewhere. And that's a very interesting thing here. I think that you can really get this super immersive experience out to potentially a billion of people, because all they have to do is pay a few dollars for a mobile virtual reality headset, which is expected to grow hugely the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's much simpler than having like a set kind of headset like the Oculus, because you know how your phone works. So for the market who's not hardcore gamers, it's easier for them to kind of enter that market. It's not as kind of intimidating as having a headset that is something completely else that you haven't tried before.
Yeah, and the problem with the cables. It's creating experiences where you can walk freely and turn around the same way several times without getting entangled in the cables. That also is a big thing. And right now, I mean, the stationary mobile VR headsets will obviously have higher performance, better quality rendering for some time, because you have access to a powerful computer. If you buy a powerful computer, but still you have to buy this powerful computer, you are still entangled in cables. And if we look on the mobile side, interesting things are happening, like the Samsung S6 that just came out. It has 8 CPU cores, and a GPU. So it's really amazing what's happening in this area, and it's expected that during this year, the processing power of a mobile device will be higher than an Xbox 360, and it's continuing to climb very rapidly. So it's not going to be very far before we can get nearly the same experience on mobile devices. And it's right now, if you try experiences on a Samsung Gear VR and compare that to Oculus DevKit 2, it's impossible to say which experience is the better. The better thing with Gear VR is that you have no cables and you can easily bring it with you to a meeting or some friend in a cafe or whatever, which is harder with bringing computer cables and Oculus Rift and the camera you have to mount on the wall and so on. So that's why we think that mobile virtual reality has a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I think it's also because if you're a gamer, what you're looking for when it comes to VR is freedom. Freedom to kind of get away from the computer, get away from sitting still and being more immersed. And then you have to actually move your body. If it's just a couch experience, then it's pretty much, the difference is not enough to buy, super expensive computers and all this equipment around it. If you can actually get the play part so easily from the mobile versions. And it's just easier.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, I'm super excited because it's so interesting that because I was thinking about that when I looked at your product, that if I was wondering if you were going to do that with actually having something in your hand as well, because that's what a lot of people are missing with VR, especially when you talk about FPS first-person shooter games, which is one of those games that a lot of people are excited to kind of have that immersive experience.
One question that you haven't asked yet, but a lot of people think about when I say walking freely in mobile virtual reality is how long time will it take before I accidentally trip on my sofa or make my television fall into the ground or anything like that. And that's essentially when we have mapped the environment.
Yeah, exactly. That's the 3D mapping part.
Yeah,
that's
it's a 3D mapping, but then
missing.
you can also set your bounds. So even though you mapped your entire apartment or your entire living room, maybe you just want to play in part of it. And then you can create a bounding volume or bounding area where you will be experiencing this experience. And what we do there is we provide this polygon to the game developer. So then the game developer can use that for anything. So in the game we're creating, it's called Wands, which is a wizard's duel, basically a magical duel between two people with magical wands. Then it's like a magical aura that if you move really close to it, you will both hear and see it, so you don't try to walk past that border. But one thing we just played around with was to, as you said, create a first-person shooter where you can be several people. So you and I could be in the same virtual environment. We could help each other out, and we are standing on top of a mountain, and the shape of the top of the mountain has the shape of the bounds of our playground. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's no thing coming, there's nothing distracting our vision just to tell us where we can't walk. It's very neatly just built into the game. So that's also something that game developers can think about, how to use the bounce polygon.
And that's going to also be a challenge for them, because suddenly they have to not only control the characters in the game, but also think about, not letting people jump off the mountain. It's going to be like thinking about people's behavior in games are going to be very different, because it's going to be how they move, not how they click or where they look. So user experience and testing is going to be, evolve even more.
Yeah, exactly. The cool thing is that being in virtual reality, holding a phone in your hand, and when you look in the virtual world, you actually see your hand and your arm, and we have this inverse kinematics making sure that the arm and the body moves pretty realistically. We don't know exactly how you move your elbow, for instance, but usually if we just configure the inverse kinematics properly, you won't notice it. And the difference between where you actually have your hand and where you perceive to have your hand in virtual reality, we have a diff that's less than 5 centimeters. And when we did some tests with this, and it seems that as soon as the difference is less than 10 centimeters, the brain adapts almost instantly. So if it's 15 centimeters, your brain will say, okay, there's a hand here that's moving just like the real hand, but slightly off. But as soon as we go below 10 centimeters, the brain just adapts and just thinks like, okay, this is my hand. So that's quite interesting, and we're somewhere between 3 and 5 centimeters diff there from reality. And then from the second, like frame to frame, we have millimeter precision.
Cool.
For devices.
So this game, can you play it right now, and where can you find it?
No, it's not released yet. So we're releasing the technology and the game. The thought we have is to release the game and the technology at the same time during the autumn.
Okay, during the autumn.
Yes, and because we basically do the game so that we can show what you can do with mobile virtual reality using positional tracking. So I'm talking about so many things at the same time, but what the game is really about is that you can do attack spells. You can cast fireballs, for instance, at each other. You can cast them directly on, or you can cast them in an arc. You can cast defense spells, where you have to aim your defense like a shield coming up in your wand, around your wand, and you have to hold it in the right direction to counter the attacking spell. Another interesting, very important thing to be able to move around in the world is we have teleportation spells. So when you play this game, maybe you just have a playground of 2 times 2 meters. So you will be able to dodge fireballs. Maybe you don't want to spend mana on casting a defense spell when you can just jump aside, or you can just crouch to watch out for incoming projectiles. And then to be able to move around in the world more, making the game more interesting, we have the possibility to teleport to different places. And it's really awesome when we use the elevation. So you teleport high up on a ledge, and then as soon as you teleport and you want to fire another projectile at your friend or your foe, you have to, turn around and look down and fire at him. That's really an amazing experience because it's not flat. It's really it's immersive.
Definitely. So can you tell me a little bit more about your team and who you have with you in the company and how you met?
Yeah, absolutely. We are 7 people in the company. We also have a few external contractors as well. The people in the company, we have been carefully selecting people from different interests. We have one guy working with funding and being responsible for negotiating with partners, clients, suppliers, and so on. Then we have one guy doing all kind of administration, carrying out things that we decide in the leading group, and basically everything, economy, administration, and other things. And then we have me, which is doing we're acting as producer, day-to-day manager, and CTO. And then we have a really talented programmer who's working on the tracking solutions and the low-level tracking and communication layers for making sure that all these devices communicate properly with each other. And we have one person that's audio and music producer, because in virtual reality, audio becomes even more important than in traditional movies or traditional games, because making sure that things sound correctly and from the right places in the virtual world and so on really affects the feeling of presence by a lot.
Definitely.
So that's why we brought this expertise into the company. He's also a talented game designer. So, and then there's one guy working with web production. We haven't seen his work publicly yet, but it's coming out soon. And he's also working with visual design, art direction, and so on.
So how long have you been developing the game, for example?
The idea started during the autumn, and the real development started basically after beginning of this year. So the ideas have been, we've actually been talking about the ideas around the game and forming the games during the autumn, but the actual development started in the beginning of this year.
So how are you going to release this when you release it? How are you going to release it to, is this going to be released to the developers first, or I mean to get people to start producing games or at least game tests for it?
Yeah, so we have a few ideas. We will run a Kickstarter for the game. Because we both as a marketing thing and also that we need people's engagement and putting money into helping finishing this game. So that's one strategy, doing a Kickstarter for that. And we talked earlier about doing a Kickstarter around the technology, but for several reasons that's just not possible. I'm not going into that right now if you don't want to, but it's not a good idea. So we decided to find a project that we could kickstart that just shows off the technology, and then we come up with this once Magic Duel game now.
It's smart because I mean, when it comes to Kickstarter, actually, it's like 60% of the campaigns that get funded, and the ones who get funded the most is games. So it's actually, I think it's a really clever move to show the technology with a game
Exactly.
instead of the other way around.
Yeah, and then we have discussions with some game companies, and hopefully we can get some other game companies starting to develop games pretty soon also, so that we can have more games on the market as the technology comes out. We also have contact with a developer that has been running these Laserdome experiences that want to create the world's first virtual reality dome. And we're talking about starting to experiment on this quite soon. Where the interesting thing, when you do a virtual world and the physical world are the same, you can put things in the real world to even more induce presence. So, for instance, you can put a heat lamp in the real world. And when you walk past it, you will feel that heat. But in the virtual world, there's a lava lake or there's something else. You can have fans blowing at you. And when you walk past there, you feel the wind, and you're actually walking past a huge window going from top to the floor. And you feel like, oh, shit, I don't want to fall out there. So there's a lot of things you can do when you match the real world with the virtual world. So there's a lot of interesting things going on there. So I hope that, I mean, if we can get that up and running also in time for the release for the technology, I think that will also create a lot of press.
Oh, definitely.
A lot of,
And that's what I was thinking about also, about the kind of Laserdome experience. If you get a team of pretty good, probably like advertising kind of film editors and those who set the stages for those kind of environments, they know how to kind of manipulate environments and manipulate kind of the effect. I just want one of those Laserdome VR virtual reality domes where I can shoot zombies. That's like the ultimate experience.
So do you think it's most interesting to do this experience as a co-op thing, or as a like deathmatch free for all, or what do you think is the most interesting?
I think, I mean, both kind of genres are really big. If you look like FPS, like first-person shooter games, I mean, my experience is, you know, I do FPS games with my best friends, and we co-op. I mean, we have our own language, how to talk to each other when we co-op. So I think that genre is going to be very much about collaboration, because also when it's FPS games, I mean, it's a lot about kind of being an army or a team or a SWAT team. And then you can really get really good together with your friends. But I think the deathmatch, if you look at like Tekken, those kind of games that are more like party games, I think you can get a lot of engagement there too. So I think the experience, how much you have to do with the world around you, is going to be so different. Because if you think about like deathmatch games, often you don't care so much about the look of the environment and stuff like that. It's more about how fast you are. While with an FPS game, it's kind of like, what's the next kind of building? Can I hide? Can I not hide? You know, do we have cover? It's more about like the environment in that kind of way. You have to, as you said, with the heat and the wind and stuff like that. If that affects your gun, that you can't shoot straight. I mean, that's going to be, you know, so much fun to kind of struggle with. While if it's really fast for those kind of deathmatch kind of versions, I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun too. I think it's just different kind of players.
Yeah, I think when you talk about these experiences, I think it comes clear that both our company and our technology and the company creating such an experience will have to have disclaimers at the size of I don't know what.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, as long as you match it properly between the virtual world and the real world, you shouldn't hurt yourself too much.
Exactly. And I mean, the ones who have kind of run those kind of laser doom places before, I mean, they know how to work with those kind of groups coming in and doing these kind of battles. So I think they're the perfect ones to kind of start it off. But I also think that if you're going to make it interesting, they can't have a set setting. They probably have to be more like kind of a movie production company, that they release a new big version each year. So it's like a new kind of setting or something.
I think that's a super interesting evolvement of their development and of their companies. But think about Laserdome. Laserdome, if you have a Laserdome setting, it's not changing that much over the years, right? Which means that they can only get so much customers, because you ask someone, have you done Laserdome? Yeah, I did it half a year ago. Do you want to do it again? We'll see, maybe next year. But as you say, it's like they can advertise, we have now new experiences, we have still have the same, they don't have to change anything physically, basically. And they can just create a new production. Well, it's still a lot of work, but they can create a production in the virtual world, and possibly even letting a group of people coming to the studio can decide, what do you want to play today?
Yeah.
And
I think that kind of connection, probably it's going to be like more professional kind of gaming and indie developers that do games, that maybe produce it for them, but they kind of provide the setting to have, put it up pretty much.
One thing we discussed was to start meetups, starting here in Stockholm first, and try to get other people interested to start meetups in other places. The interesting part with this meetup would be that we choose a location, for instance, a Laserdome arena, or some other, it doesn't have to be, it can be any kind of building, really. And the meetup takes place in these premises, and before the meetup, we send out the measurements for the premises, and we also create a very, very simple virtual object for the room, or for the rooms. And then the developers, indies and anyone interested can just work with that model to create their own world and experience. And then we have meetups every month or every week or whatever, where we book this premises and people can try out their experiences with the people visiting. That could be a way of getting this into the hands of a lot of people and just play with it.
Yeah, because that's also like one extra layer for developing this. You have to actually have a venue or a setting to try the game. You can't just send a link to people. You have to actually have them there.
Yeah, but still, you can do the other way we talked about earlier, where you just need a flat space of 10 times 10 meters, for instance. Then it's very much easier to... you can easily create a game where you have one level which is 4 times 4 meters, one which is 10 times 10, and one which is 20 times 20. And then if people want to experience the big ones, they need to find... maybe people will be renting sports halls in the future, but instead of playing badminton, they play these virtual reality arena games.
Oh, I think definitely. I mean, there's so much, as we talk about this, like Laserdome and all, there's so many markets around this that is kind of gonna be a bit disrupted, just because you are actually gonna need a physical space of some kind. But that also gives another layer of just imagination, what you can create. As you said, you can be in pretty much a forest and play FPS games, running around with your phone.
The tracking is good, and it will improve over time. But I mean, we struggle if we have a room where some of the walls are just completely white without any features at all that we can track. Then the tracking won't work. And the same outdoors, it can't be just any place. It has to be, some features that can be tracked. And if you're in so that's it. But it works outdoors. A problem with outdoors can be if you have a flat ground, which is very just asphalt, and there's no features there. And then you have all the tracking points far off in the distance. The jitter will be bigger, because the closer the tracking points are, the less the jitter. So there are those issues. But most of the time, environments are not that super clean, which means that there will be tracking points.
So it's actually better to have a bit like clutter at home.
Yeah, you should. Don't clean your house too much.
It's gonna end up with people like saying, no, don't like, don't like clean my.
But there's trash on the floor. Don't touch it.
Yeah, it's for my FPS game tomorrow. Oh, okay. So much fun talking to you, Ricky. This is such an exciting area. This is actually going to be our longest episode ever, but it's so much to kind of explore in this field. So I'm really happy that you joined us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and I also think it's a very interesting area to talk about. So I could talk for probably the whole day.
Great. I'm looking forward to both the Kickstarter and actually trying out the game. And thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
You've been listening to Ricky Helgesson from Univrses, talking with Shumei Rudin. If you want to learn more about Univrses and their upcoming game Wands with the Dueling Wizards, you can visit their website at Univrses, that's UNIVRSES.com. If you're an entrepreneur near Stockholm, Sweden, there's a great opportunity now for you to grow your business. Startup Cabin Tribes is where you'll have entrepreneurial peers helping you achieve your business goals over the next 12 months. Together, you're going to learn how to build a team around you and your personality, how to reach your company goals together, and develop better strategies in marketing and sales. And there's a whole lot more. You can read all about it and apply to be part of our next tribe at startupcabin.com/tribes. Until next time, we wish you all much success.